Hi, this is a video for electricians who are trying to figure out how to lay out the wires in their house. I just wanted to show you some specific details about what you're going to need to be thinking about here. I have here a electric blueprint with annotations of pressure. This one actually does not fulfill the checklist requirements. I'll leave you to figure out what's missing, but it does give us what we need to figure out exactly how this thing is going to be laid out. First thing I want to talk about is a wire. All these lines drawn here are obviously going to have to be wires, and we haven't had to worry about the length of the wires before because we've been using those wires with clips on them. They're all the same length. But when we're doing this work, we need to think now about how long these wires need to be in order to get from one place to another. That's one of the things that an electrician needs to think about. So for example, this wire over here, which is going from the grid master switch to, say, this part of this room. I can measure on this drawing that this looks like it's about 20 centimeters long, going from 0 to 20. But if this drawing isn't to scale, that is, if this drawing isn't exactly the same size, or even if it is to scale rather, if it's not exactly the same size as my actual house, if my actual house is going to be bigger than this, then I, as the electrician, need to know how long this wire actually has to be. So other people in your group should be able to clarify, maybe this side of the house is actually going to be 40 centimeters long, in which case you would have to do some calculations. Well, if this isn't actually 40 centimeters long, if it's only 25 centimeters, then this would have to be longer than 20 centimeters, the way you're measuring it here, in order to be the right length for your wires. So, getting onto the wire itself, we're going to be using this wire and some green wire. There's some white wire here and red wire. It's all the same inside. We can tell there's some copper on the middle of this. And this instrument here is called a wire stripper that's used to take this insulation, this red stuff, off of the wire. We will use the smallest size of this, which says 20 on one side and 22 on the other side. The way you use this is it's kind of like a pair of scissors, where you put the wire in here and then close it, but because it's got these holes in it, it has only cut the outside ring of this plastic. So that means you can pull this and it just takes this part, which is called the insulation, off. Notice this is now this hollow piece and this is left. That's important because when we make connections to, for example, this bulb holder, we need a bare end that can go into the connection. These are called phonostock clips. They're just a way of making a connection, and if you push down on the clip for the bulb holder like this and then slide this in here, notice there's a little kind of part that catches. When you let it go, this is nice and firm in here, so it won't get pulled out. That's a really nice handy way of making a connection to these actual bulbs that we haven't had to use yet because we haven't been using this bare wire. Couple more things I want to talk about. Switches. You guys have made these in class and you're going to make them in your house, but we're going to have to talk about, or you're going to have to actually figure out how to connect these directly to each side of the switch. So one way to do it is to kind of make a wrap around here and make sure that there's a connection there. If you don't trust this connection, you can figure out a way to kind of wrap these parts of the switch around like this maybe, and then pinch them so that this is more carefully in there. I'll have some pliers in here so you can squeeze this and make sure that's not going anywhere. You're also welcome to, by the way, these are just mounted on cardboard, but you'll have some pieces like these. You're welcome to take a piece of foam core board that is the wall of your house and just install these into the wall of your house. It doesn't have to be a separate switch like this. You could actually just mount this stuff onto the wall of whatever you're whatever you're actually building. So the last thing is about resistors. We do have plenty of resistors available for you. These are both 100 ohm resistors, and I put them end to end with this LED because I had calculated that I needed 200 ohms of resistance with this LED to make it light up properly. This is one example of a use of resistors that could be useful to you. If you want to actually dim a regular bulb like this, we have some 10 ohm resistors that will work for that. And lastly, if you want to actually dim the bulb by making it dimmer or less dim, you're going to need to make a dimmer out of a piece of pencil lead, which is basically like a resistor, except by changing the connections, you can change the resistance of the resistor itself. All of these things have in common that you'll need to think carefully about how to make the connections that you need to make. Notice I've just kind of twisted these together. It's possible to use like a different kind of metal that gets hot to kind of like melt some metal and connect these two pieces together so that they can't be separated. That's called soldering, but we're not going to do that in class. If you want to do that, you can come in outside of class and we can work on how to do that. But it won't be a priority for the class. You can even just make this secure by taping it together, as long as you are 100% sure after twisting it that there's a solid connection there. I would probably fold this over like this and then tape this so that I know that there's a connection between these two. Likewise, if you need to connect to the wire, I would hold these two together like this. Notice they're kind of together in this way, and I'd use my fingers to try to twist them together in this way so that they're both wrapping around each other. This is not easy to do, but it is a way that you can make a pretty sturdy connection between a wire and a resistor like this. And then again, I would put a piece of tape over this just to make it sturdier and make sure that I know that that connection's going to stay, because these connections can otherwise be a little floppy. Anyway, if you're using LEDs or if you're using something like this, you need to come up with clever ways to make the connections that you need to make so that you can use all the pieces that you need to use for your house.